Whoa, that eckled. Okay, welcome everybody to the In Sync Frequencies podcast. This is the official first episode we've ever done. Kyle, how are you feeling? Wow, I can't even speak. Kyle, how are you feeling?
It's just incredible to be even the conversations before, and I must say I am so stuffed from eating all of that pizza. But anyway,
Context.
I'm happy to be here, and it's amazing what God is doing, and I believe that this is the right time for this to go out.
Yeah,
I feel like the world needs something like this,
absolutely,
and especially
bro.
the people in our city and in our nation.
I so agree. And just for those of you who are listening, just a little context behind us starting this podcast. I feel like I'm meant to look at the camera, so like you there behind the screen. We hope you really take like something from this conversation. The heart behind it is just to grow together at the end of the day. And we were talking just behind the scenes with some of the lads behind the camera. And there's something that I learned a while ago, and I shared it with Kyle, which was for every truth, there's usually two lies. And something that I'm really trusting and believing for from God in this context, in this setting, is that when we learn about truth together, when we grow in learning His truth, the ultimate truth together, that it will impact and change lives and give hope to the people of South Africa in specific. Because I think there's just so much chaos happening right now with everything around the world. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in a sense of hopelessness. So that's kind of the heart behind it. And also frequency. It's quite a word. It's quite interesting. Frequency. So what I've learned just in our friendship, right? And for those of you who are wondering why I'm going to friendship, that's actually the topic that we're going to talk about is friendship. You know, it's quite a unique, special thing in life. But one of the things I've loved about our friendship is the fact that we are two different people, but we're willing to synchronize in conversation, which means for anyone who might be a little lost with what I'm saying, it means that you're okay if you're wrong, but you're willing to understand and you're willing to grow together. And
absolutely.
That's something that I value about our friendship, is that we can come with opposing views, but we can at least sit down, have a conversation, talk about it. So that's the topic for today. So Kyle, when you think friendship, bro, what is the first thing that kind of pops into your mind? Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot here, but just for any of you who don't know, Kyle Naidoo over here is the official youth pastor of his church. Overall, he oversees all the youth in the area. So just a little like round of applause for this guy. I don't know if I got the hockey here. Yeah, let's go. So it's gonna be really good. But he's our youth pastor. He's one of my best friends, and he serves the Lord. He loves the Lord. He loves children and kids and teens, even though they, test his patience every now and again. But he loves God and he loves community. And he's just, get yourself a really, really good teammate in life. I think that's super valuable. So let's jump right back into
Thank you, man.
Friendship, bro. Go for it.
Yeah, I think friendship is quite a unique and very special thing. I think that it's something that everyone needs.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's also, because I'm an introvert.
What?
When I first came to Bible college, I thought that I didn't need friends.
Dang, really?
If I had God and God alone, I was Gucci. I was fine.
Way.
There was no issues with my life. Absolutely happy.
I didn't even know that. What the heck?
And I was just happy to be a part of community.
Wow.
But I realized that I actually needed people in my inner circle. But I only realized I needed it when I was in it. Because I recharged being alone.
Yeah, that's true.
And I thought I had everything I needed. Similar to Adam in the garden. He had everything. He had God's presence. He had all the fruit, all the foods to eat from. He could go anywhere he wanted to eat. He had everything. And God still said that it is not good for man to be alone. There was still some sort of human connection that was needed. And I think it's super underrated in the world we live in today. So
Agreed.
Friendship, bro, I think friendship is God's idea. It's not man's idea.
Wow.
And I think that friendship is something that we all need. Absolutely.
Yeah, 110 cement. That's a saying that Carl likes to throw out there, and it's kind of stuck with me too. But I agree with you, bro. I remember coming to college, and I was the complete opposite. I was like, I need to get to know every single person. I need to know their name, their last name, their aunties, their uncles. Like I wanted to know what was going on in their life. But I think in the same context of like an inner circle, like you were saying, I knew a lot about everyone, but not everyone knew a lot about me.
Sure.
You know, so they only knew the sides that I presented, which is only human nature. We do that until we feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it earlier. You said you didn't realize you needed it until you were in it. For you, what was that moment? When did you realize, oh, dang, this is priceless. This is something of high value. And I can't believe I thought I could continue without it, you know?
So this is crazy. And it actually blew my theology out of the water.
Wow.
Because I thought that healing was found in Jesus alone. So I was in a space in my life where I was dealing with a lot of things, battling with addictions, and I thought that if I repented before God, then I was going to be absolutely okay. But when I read the book of James, and I was doing like a study on it in college, and it said that, you know, confess your sins to one another and you'll receive healing. And I was like, this doesn't seem right, because if I ask God for forgiveness for my sins, then I'll be healed, right? So I ended up being in a place where I was like, okay, this thing is still bothering my life. I need another level of healing. Yeah, I need something to shift.
Wow.
And then when I met you guys, when I met you and Nick, and we started having those deep conversations, you know, our relationship had moved past superficial, and we started chatting about God and started getting a little bit deeper. And I just started, you know, we started talking about all of these things we were struggling with.
Yeah.
And just like that, like just a rush of God's healing power hit me that I never thought that I needed before.
Agreed.
And it just came through the healing power of the ear.
Wow.
You know, the healing power of the ear. Like when you actually like somebody takes the time to listen to you. People underestimate this. Like,
absolutely,
there is healing to be found in somebody understanding and hearing where you're at.
Say it again, dude. That's so good.
You know, there's healing to be found in that. Like when you're hurt and you're in your struggle and you're in an environment that is safe. You know, Caroline Leaf calls it the love zone. You know, when you're in the love zone, it's easy for you to share your problems. And I mean, you need God, but you need people around you.
So true.
Who following God, who can pull you to a higher place. I know I'm going on forever.
No, keep going, bro. It's powerful.
Even Moses in the one of the battles in the Old Testament, I can't quote the exact scripture.
But it is in Exodus.
Some must be in the Exodus.
Somewhere there.
If it's with the homie Moses. But, you know, he was in a place where, well, he was on top of a hill. And Joshua and the rest of the army were fighting at the bottom of the hill. And I think it was Aaron and her.
And Miriam,
that, you know, Moses started getting tired. And when his hands were raised, the staff was raised.
Yes.
They were winning the battle. But when his hands dropped, they started losing the battle.
Absolutely.
And he needed friends to come alongside him to lift his hands in that moment, funny enough, in a posture of worship, so that the battle could be won on the ground. And I think that's what we need, you know, friends that can, not just any friends, but friends that can hold our hands in a posture of worship before God, so we can receive healing.
Yo, as you're saying that, dude, it's so good, because I think sometimes people, and I can speak for myself, I've surrounded myself around friends who are great, but they haven't helped me surrender in the posture of worship.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I've had friends who've comforted me. They say, oh, you know, if you've been holding up that staff for a long period of time, you must be exhausted. So they comfort my feelings, but they don't fuel my faith.
Sheesh. That's deep.
Yeah. Like the Red Sea, you know. That's deep. But seriously, dude, I think it's so powerful and so true. And I think one thing I've learned, and I mean, you and Nick are probably a first reference for me in terms of like what it really means. No offense to anyone that I know and love, but this is just where for me I really felt the power of an inner circle, and the healing of an inner circle was with you and Nick. But also, in order to be close to someone who's holding up their own staff, you kind of have to be willing to be there for them in their greatest struggle. You know, you can't help someone who isn't in need of help.
Yeah.
And you can't expect help if you don't display the need for help.
Yeah.
And you can only get that in proximity, in the proximity of the person who's willing to share their heart. And I think what we learned early on was the power of vulnerability. It's Crystal actually said this best. Shout out to Crystal McMillan, our leader for the past few years. She's just been incredible, and I remember her saying this in a preach. Vulnerability is extremely powerful, but it's also extremely risky, because the person is either going to accept you or they're going to reject you.
Sure.
And I think the question that I kept asking myself was, who can I really be my authentic, unfiltered self with, where I don't have to be concerned about them misinterpreting my words?
Sure.
Because sometimes people misinterpret you, and that's okay. You know, they're trying to help out. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not the right people for your inner circle.
Sure.
And then you get people who hear you but don't understand you. And then you also get people who hear you, but maybe their own spiritual walk, their own walk with God isn't as real for them. You know, they may be not in that place where they're like, actually, it's God or nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think for us, we were at a point where it was like, yo, I'm gonna like break. I'm gonna die. Like, if I don't confess like my struggles, like we're talking everything. There is not one thing that this man of God in front of me does not know about my life. There's literally not one thing.
Sure.
He knows absolutely everything. He knows me through and through. In fact, at one point, I think he knew me better than my parents. Not that my parents don't know those things, but I think there's a sense of holiness in a way where the Spirit of God does something in that friendship, but it comes back down to what we were saying earlier about listening.
Yeah.
I actually learned that from you. I learned the power of healing that can take place when you simply lend an ear, which I find quite fascinating. And what would you say, Kyle, like the progression of that point? Because we had a recent conversation, you, myself, and Nick, about friendship, and you can say that, but what happens when that happened like 5 years ago, and maybe it hasn't happened since? Like, how would you tackle that moving forward, or what would you have to say about that context?
I think like one thing we always have to realize, whether you are a pastor, whether you are a person who just attends church, whatever level you are, there are no levels in God.
Preach,
but
dude.
It's like everybody is dealing with a struggle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the same struggles, sometimes it's new struggles. But I think sometimes we expect to be in this perfect position, and when we feel like we need to be in this perfect position, it prevents us from being vulnerable. So I should be further than I was back then when I first was vulnerable.
Yeah.
But now that I've reached this point in my life where I've, Kyle's a youth pastor, everybody's
he
like...
He struggles with nothing.
Everybody's like, oh, send your kids to him. You're going to receive some healing, it's amazing,
Guys, you think he's joking. This is legit.
And it's like, obviously that's cool.
Right.
But at the same time, Kyle is also human.
Yeah.
And Kyle has many, many, many flaws. We are flawed people.
Flaws?
We are imperfect people that are serving a perfect God.
Yeah.
And there will always be a need for confession. Whether you are the top dog or whatever position you are in life, there's always going to be a need for vulnerability. And I think sometimes we're not willing to sacrifice our reputation.
Yep.
Because now my like people know me to be this, and I had to deal with that, my insecurities.
Same.
Embracing who I am, but also acknowledging what I am not.
Yeah.
And acknowledging the shortcomings of my life.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why, a lot of pastors may even fail later on in their lives, is because they lose the need for vulnerability, because now you're the guy that everybody gets to receive advice from, but you also need advice. You also need people around you. You also need a space to confess your sins and confess the things that you're struggling with. But you have to be willing to sacrifice your reputation and
Yeah.
willing to risk it, because on the other side of that risk is that river of life, that river of healing that flows through you, that is unmatched. It's unmatched than being in a safe circle with friends.
Agreed, dude. That's such powerful stuff, because I think a lot of the time we'll go to someone in church, and I'm sure it's happened to you. I know it's happened to me, where someone will go through life, they'll end up experience extreme brokenness, like we all do. We all face trials and tribulations, but because now maybe you work at a church, they'll come to you and tell you everything, which I find incredible. Don't get me wrong. I think that's powerful. Part of being plugged into a local church is even better. But let's say it's their first point of entry and they share absolutely everything. And the most common thing I hear is, I don't even know you that well, but I'm telling you everything that other people don't know about me. It's quite funny. But I say to them, that's okay. That's fine. Like, we need a safe place to share. And you're going to experience healing when you actually tell someone what you're really going through, and not alluding to what you're going through. That's a whole other conversation.
Sure.
But they would come and they would share everything, but then they would never revisit the conversation.
Sheesh, bro.
And so I think we experience partial healing, or we experience healing in that moment. But the moment we struggle with maybe the same addiction or the same wrong, unhealthy thought patterns, or we have a traumatic encounter in life, all of a sudden, because we haven't kept that relationship, because we haven't been consistent, we don't want to go back to that person.
Yeah.
We would rather go to another church, to another person, tell them everything. Sure. And so what ends up happening is you have these partial healings, and there isn't this progressional sense of walking alongside someone. Discipleship, essentially.
Yeah.
I know that's something that Lal believes in strongly and is very good at, is just how Jesus discipled his own disciples. He walked with them. He didn't just hear them out and then left them hanging. He heard them out and continued journeying with them. But it's a two-way street. It's not just, hey, follow me, and they had to come. It was, hey, follow me, and they get to choose whether they're going to be there all the time. But I wanted to segue that into our friendship context. Is like, we recently had a conversation where we went, you know what, guys, hey, I'm still struggling with this, I didn't realize that was still a thought process of mine or whatever. And I think having friends that are in it for the long haul, like, that's important, that's very, very important. And it's relationships eternal. It's one of the few things you can actually, probably the only thing you can take to heaven is relationship. But I mean, I don't want to hop on for too long, but that's just...
I just wanted to add on something here, because Francis Chan said something so powerful that I watched earlier. He was preaching at Jesus Image. Amazing. And he was saying that, Jesus says to, when you give to the poor, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing, or your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And he says that these days we've got it switched around. So we hide ourselves, our true selves, and we broadcast our good deeds.
Yeah.
When the Bible instructs us to broadcast our failures and hide our good deeds.
Wow.
And
are you hearing this?
Crazy.
That's powerful stuff.
Crazy, because that's where we actually will see a body that's maturing.
Yeah.
And this is also why we struggle to see people's lives changed most of the time, because of this. We'd rather show our good deeds in the house of God.
Absolutely.
And on the inside, people are actually struggling. It's actually
crazy.
So crazy. And bro, I just think like it's so key that we're able to create an environment in a church where people are able to share stuff. And even Tim Ross, he was saying,
yes,
the church is
the
full of people. Yeah, shout out to the
basement.
The church is full of people who figured it out. That the Bible is full of people who are figuring it out. And the Bible is, we see the shortcomings of these guys.
Absolutely.
That none of them were absolutely perfect, except for Jesus, the Messiah. Everybody else, even Paul the Apostle, wrote 13 books of the New Testament, still had a thorn in his side that he had to deal with, And I just think we're not willing to reveal what those thorns are. We're not willing to because we don't want to sacrifice that position of perfection.
Yeah, that image.
Yeah, that image.
No, that's powerful, dude, because I've seen God do way more through me sharing my brokenness than my wholeness.
Yeah, sure.
Because I find my wholeness in revealing my brokenness.
Wow.
Which is Him.
Wow.
I remember being mugged and robbed 3 times. And that testimony reached more people than maybe some new revelation that I had learned in private with God. I realized that just the simple testimony of my life and what God had done, not what I had learned, could reach more hearts than my eloquent words.
Sheesh.
And I think that's something I really love about Jesus. I love the fact that in His friendship with His disciples, it was simple, but it was so profound.
Yeah.
It was so simple, people reject the idea it could actually have an impact. You know, according to, I mean, obviously we're talking about friendship now, but in the context of leadership, I remember reading Spiritual Leadership, you know, Oswald.
Yeah. Great book.
Great book, powerful book, challenged me to the core, still does. But he said, according to the modern standards of leadership, Jesus failed.
Sheesh.
Exactly what you're saying, the reputation, trying to keep this image. He failed because he died. But he actually lived. Yeah. So to beat death, he had to go through it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we find our wholeness.
Sure.
To beat brokenness, you have to go through it. You don't beat brokenness by going around it, because all you're doing is pointing to the very thing that you actually need to overcome.
Sure.
And it's like, we're too afraid of the pain, we're too afraid of what it will cost us, but it actually ends up costing you more by avoiding it than simply stepping into it. And again, that's where friendship comes into play. I mean, I remember when where I felt God say to me, hey, I want you to give your laptop away. And I was like, what? Get behind me, Satan. You know, like, no way. Because I've been blessed with this laptop, and I love the community I have, and there are friends who were trying to do the best thing and encourage me, but they were saying, you know, why would God tell you to get rid of the laptop? And instantly Holy Spirit was like, Abraham. He got the promise, he got his son, but he had to be willing to sacrifice his son, because God needed his heart more than Abraham needed God's provision.
Sheesh.
And so I remember just struggling. They're like, no, God wouldn't ask you to do that. And I'm like, oh, wait, there's actually a biblical reference about this. And I remember going back and reading about Abraham and how, and then it makes me think of the scripture, you know, obedience is better than sacrifice. You know, I can't remember exactly where it is in the word, but I definitely know that is in the Bible. You know, obedience is better than sacrifice. And I think sometimes we apply that to our personal lives more than a friendship context.
Yeah.
You know, like you were saying earlier, like, okay, I'm good, God, I don't need that inner circle, I'm being obedient. But also it's like, to the extent that you can see. Yeah. What about the blind areas that you can't see? That's why I'm grateful for Nick, because Nick's like, yo, bro, like, when are you giving your laptop away? He did that for like 3 months. He was like, dude, like, what's going on? You mentioned this, you said you felt God say this. Now here's the thing, if we didn't have that inner circle, I don't know if I would have given that laptop away.
Yeah. Sure.
Let that sink in. Like, if we didn't have that beautiful sense of friendship, I don't know if I would have. And I knew that the inner circle had to know about it, because people who knew of me but didn't know me fully were trying to be kind, but they didn't. I hadn't invited them into a place where they could challenge me, and I think that's what you do when you're in an inner circle. So it's not just a matter of being heard and experiencing the healing through listening to someone. It's also giving them permission, like, hey, you have permission to challenge me on this. And I think quite often that's how close friends end up separating sometimes, because now that they have permission to challenge you and it gets uncomfortable and you don't like that, you're not willing to submit to the process.
Sure.
You actually end up losing somebody who was so for you.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process, but I know, like, a scripture that comes to mind is like, better a wound from a friend than multiple kisses from an enemy. Yeah. You know, in Proverbs, like, I know it's in Proverbs, better a wound from a friend. And for you, bro, is there a specific area in your life that you feel somebody said something and it just was like tough to hear. But at the end of the day, looking back now in hindsight, maybe not in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, what's something for you that you went, nope, I don't want to do that. And it hurts to even hear that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're confronted on something that you didn't realize was happening, or maybe they pointed out the need for something to happen.
Yeah.
Like, go for it.
So, I mean, I've been through many situations like this. That's so crazy, man. And I mean, when you really feel that wound and you can decide to throw all of the toys out the cot, or you can decide to listen and become more wise.
Love that.
There's a beautiful story. I'll share a story from my life just now, but there's a beautiful story in I think it's the Book of Chronicles, it's the Book of Chronicles, and it's David and his men. They're walking through a town, and there's a person that's like throwing rocks at them and cursing them. And like you shouldn't, you're cursed and all of this crazy stuff. And his men are like, and these are like the toughest men out here. They're like Navy SEAL level
warriors,
crazy warriors, and they've slain giants, and they're like, let's just go kill this guy. And David's like, no, don't kill him, because what if his words are from the Lord?
Wow.
Just on the chance that what that person was saying was from God, he was willing to yield and still receive that criticism. And I think, there's been many moments in my life, moments where I thought I was right. I thought that I was doing the absolutely right thing. And then a leader pulls you into the office and says to you, actually, what you said here was wrong. And it's causing strife. It's causing some bad stuff happening. And I realized that sometimes it takes that person so much of courage and thought and prayer and thinking to get to the point of even having that conversation with you. So
true.
So the only way that they could get to that point is because of love.
Yeah, that's good.
If they didn't love, they would let me carry on in my ways.
Facts.
If they didn't love me. And I think this is what this generation needs to know, is that friends are not only the people who agree with you. Friends are the people who are willing to tell you, hey, the position you're in right now is dangerous for you.
Whack.
Exactly. and you be willing to take that advice and move from it. I think that is so important. These days, if somebody says something that's anything against what we believe, or what the road that I'm on,
it's like, shun, get behind me.
You're cancelled, bro.
Yeah, cancel culture, 100%.
But the beautiful thing about good friendships is it's iron sharpens iron, and iron sharpening iron is friction. It's gonna create some sparks,
Absolutely.
And sparks are not always the nicest thing to see, but at the end, those blades are sharper than ever, both sides, and I think that's the beauty of having a friendship where sometimes we will disagree, sometimes we will, I'll wound you and you'll wound me.
Yeah, it's true.
You might be cutting off a tumor from my life that could grow and kill me, that, and so that's what the wounding is there for, to cut off those things that it's basically like what the Bible calls the circumcision of the heart.
Yes.
Sometimes you can't see your shortcomings.
Yeah.
And you need friends who are behind you can see there's something that's sus there on Kyle. Let's just grab the knife and cut it off him quickly.
Surprise attack. I mean, surprise health.
And I've seen so much of health and life come from that. But the amazing thing that I love about the friends that I have that follow God is not just the wounding that they do, but the stitching up of the wound that they do afterwards.
Come on, dude.
And that's the beautiful part about even relationship with God.
Yeah.
Is he cuts you with the word, but then he sews it back together, and he's always in pursuit of wholeness.
So good.
When we have friends that are also in pursuit of our wholeness, they're not just going to be there for the wounding parts, but they're also going to be there. They're going to allow you to wound them, and they're also going to be there to mend that wound and to talk through it and to go through those difficult conversations that not everybody wants to go through.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when it comes to friendship, it's like maybe ones that aren't as like inner circle related can just be like telling you how wrong you are or where you need to improve. But then, like you say, they're not there to help stitch it up. So there isn't somebody who's saying, hey, but I'll walk this journey with you. I'll be a part of it if you would like me to be a part of it. I think those are keepers, you know.
Yeah.
And also, they don't necessarily have to be an inner circle friend off the bat.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing. Sometimes an inner circle starts off as a gift, but it can be a barrier to you not actually getting to know other people as well.
Yeah, sure.
Because they're not part of my inner circle.
Sure.
I think it's important for us to realize that other people need safe friends too.
Yeah.
Now that we've found safety in the blessings he's given us, we need to be a blessing to those around us. We need to serve them in the context of friendship. I think it's very seldom to come across somebody who actually feels safe to talk to about whatever you're facing in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, Akshay and I remember we connected. What's up? Akshay's like behind the camera.
Shout out.
But like when we first met, it was a long time ago. Like he was kind of passing by at a local church in the area, and then there was another time where we met at Jameth Coffee. Shout out to Jameth Coffee. If you're ever in KZN, go check them out. They're amazing. And we just connected. I can't remember. We connected over videography. How ironic, because like you guys are filming right now. But we connected over videography, and it was so surface level, but it was a genuine sense of interest. And eventually it just kind of got a little more. And now it's gotten to the point where there's so much trust. Actually, hopefully he's nodding because it'll be awkward if, but I mean, I've learnt and seen the fruit of God in it, because not only has he blessed the friendship in the context of I felt, and actually you can correct me at any time, but like I felt like all I needed to be to Akshay was a good friend. I didn't need to expect anything from him for me. And I think often people don't realize part of forming an inner circle is choosing to be a good friend, even if maybe you're not receiving a good friend in that moment.
Sure.
Because it opens the door to, hey, I actually really want to get to know more about this person and what they're about. But if we're so consumed on what we receive from people, we forget to give to them too.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite scriptures is Jesus says, I did not come to, oh no, don't go blank now, Steve. That's such a good point. But basically he says, I did not come to be served, but to serve.
Yeah.
Sure. He's the lead servant. He leads friendships by serving friends.
Sure.
And I think often we too much microwave culture. It's like if they don't fit my match, if they don't resonate, if they don't have the same interests. I mean, actually, no, I'm pretty sure we have very different interests in certain areas. We'll find out in the next few weeks. But, like I've realized that what we have is so precious, I want someone else to have it.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's
it's amazing.
Part of the fruit of a godly friendship is I want other people to have it. A friend of ours, Billy, he taught me what it meant to be a safe place. He taught me how I could tell him everything in my life, and he would still love me even in my brokenness.
Yeah.
And it's like, now that you're experiencing greater healing, why wouldn't you want other people to have that too?
Yeah.
It actually bugs my mind. So it's like you'll have people that you'll go to, and it's not throwing shade at anyone, but it's like receiving the gospel in the context of friendship and then never telling anyone else about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose that's what this is. This podcast right now is meant to assist and help to anyone who's willing to listen.
Yeah.
And we don't have it figured out. Obviously not. Like,
definitely not.
Wow, still have a lot to learn and do.
Lots.
But I think the cool thing is that we're willing to try. We're willing to keep going. We're willing to fail, to get back up, to keep encouraging one another. Yeah, and I'm just thinking now, like, what's something you've seen when it comes to youth? You're serving as the local pastor of youth, and how do you think friendships has impacted like this upcoming generation? Like, we've got our generation, Gen Z, and then Gen Alpha are coming through now.
Yeah.
But do you see like a difference between Gen Z and like a surrounding of friends compared to Gen A? Because also now we're in the information age. So now it's like screen time galore.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
So, I mean, this is crazy because, I mean, Will.i.am was saying something. He was saying that we're living in a scary world where AI is starting to, be more intelligible, more, starting to create more coherent conversations and thoughts than humans.
Whoa.
Whereas humans we've reduced down to abbreviations, emojis.
Oh, yes. I think I remember seeing
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
Crazy.
I remember seeing that video, yeah.
But it's what I see from even Gen A is they're happy for a lot of their, the bottom of Gen Z. They are more willing to have most of their relationships on a device,
Yeah.
and not really get into vulnerable conversations. But yet, that's also been, I've seen, one of the biggest things that they've hungered for is realness.
Yeah, that's so true.
Authenticity and genuineness. They're looking for that. They want that. They even
Yeah.
want that within the context of church. They're wanting that realness to come through. But I've seen great people be corrupted by bad friendships, and it's not saying don't be friends with people that aren't Christian, or don't be friends with, because that's what Jesus did. Jesus spent his time, a lot of the time, in places that nobody else would go, with the worst of the worst and the low of the low, the lowest of the whatever you say. Anyway, but it's so like important that your people that are in your inner circle are those who are going to push you towards God.
Absolutely.
Stir your hunger for God, who are going to lead you in the right direction. But it's hard to keep people that don't hold the same values as you in your inner circle, because one way or another you're going to rub off on each other.
So
and
true.
Either you're going to rub off on them, if you're strong in your faith and if you hold fast to your beliefs, or you're going to allow them to influence who you are. And all of a sudden, now you're in church with this person. Then when you're at school with these guys, it's a different story. I've never seen. I've never. I'm like, who is this kid? I've had such a brilliant conversation with them the previous week about how amazing God is. The next week they're with their crew and they just look at me and pass me by like they don't even know who I am.
Playing their music.
Because it's not cool to greet the youth pastor anymore. You know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, they're figuring it out.
I'm tempted to sing some of the songs that they listen to right now.
They're figuring it out, and we also have to give them grace for that.
Absolutely.
And be there to encourage them along the way.
So good.
But I do see a lot of kids who've been taken out by bad friendships, and it's frightening. It's sometimes, in some cases, it's led to complete shunning of God's ways and God's truth.
That's crazy.
But I really do think that we need to teach them how to kindle and how to stir up good friendships and good relationships, because it's such an important thing for them to have.
That's so good, bro. I think many different things, but when it comes to Generation Alpha, I would say even learning about them in Tribe, they definitely want truth.
Yeah.
They definitely want truth. They are extremely hungry for it. And it's interesting. You can't really share truth unless you spend time with truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is God. You can't. I think quite often we try and share the truth of certain situations that we face, as we always do. But I think you actually get better at conveying truth when you spend time in the Word.
Yeah.
Like, just absolutely. Because not necessarily just the Bible, but the author of the Bible while reading his book. Yeah. Like actually going, Holy Spirit, please help me, see this. And then you can actually give a healthy conveyance of truth to Gen A. Like, that's what I've realized. Because also, everything we were saying, we were to the previous generation.
Yeah.
And the only thing that has saved us is by them intervening and actually calling us out on certain things, but then also presenting Jesus.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't know what you think, but in today's day and age, I think quite often we're trying to give like quick fixes instead of like long-term, like true sense of like rest in their spirits and their souls, which is Jesus, and I think maybe like as we come in for a landing pretty soon, is we've spoken a lot about like friendships, the power of listening, the power of having a safe place, vulnerability, the right people around you, the wrong people around you, like you just said, bad company corrupts good character. And then we've also mentioned about being a good friend. Do you think someone can be a good friend without spending time like just with God?
I think, you definitely can. I think you can be a good friend, but it would only reach a certain level,
Yeah.
I can, somebody who's I listen to a lot of people who are knowledgeable in the world that aren't necessarily Christians, and it's good information.
Yes.
But when it comes to helping people in their soul and spirit realm, it's very difficult when you aren't engaging in a relationship with God. But there are very many good people out there, who aren't necessarily believers, but they can give really good advice on what to do and what to say. But when it comes to the stuff like, I really need healing, Steve, because got this diagnosis or whatever, or I really need some help because I really need some prayer because there's, I'm just feeling burdened right now. I feel anxious because there's something coming up in my life. There comes a point where that kind of the help reaches a cap.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
Now I just, I'm not necessarily needing Steve and his advice, but I'm needing the Jesus that's inside of him that's going to speak to me, because there are moments in my life where I'm here with God, and then there's moments where I feel like I can't hear his voice, where I feel like I'm trapped in a situation, and whatever I'm going through has put blinders on me, where I cannot see what God is saying and doing. And then Steve comes and he chats to me, and it's like life to my soul, because I can hear the Jesus that's inside of him that I missed because of my
your vaza,
yeah, and because maybe I'm also disappointed in God for not coming through.
Sure.
And I don't want to hear what he has to say.
But then he'll use someone else.
But then he'll use somebody else, which is incredible about God. And that's really, friendship is a testimony of who God is. Because in the times where I might reject who God is, my friends can also be the voice of God. So it's like you can't really hide from God. He'll come to you one way or another, and friendships are a testimony that God is always pursuing us.
Love that.
And that's why you need friends around you who love God, because they're gonna be a reminder of who He is to you in different ways. Like Nick he'll come like he's often like the sword.
Samurai.
You also
that
like
was Indiana Jones, but anyway,
yours is coupled with a whole lot of comfort, and I mean, Steve, Nick has a whole lot of comfort.
Sorry, Nick, you don't have any comfort.
But he really he'd speak to you in a very like convicting way, where you're like, oh, it makes you really consider it.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's really like sharp.
No, he is sharp. It's very sharp.
And we all bring those different attributes to each other, and that's the beauty of community, and that's what I love about it.
I think it's also cool, like you, myself, and Nick are also different.
Very different.
We're very different. Like on a typical standard gathering, some social gathering, I don't know if we would, like, I mean, we'd probably say hello and stuff, but I don't know if it would have been the way God has knitted us together. I just don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it would have happened God. Or it is God. We all came to Bible college and we learned more about each other, but it wasn't until we were like all in the same room with no one else that God really, really did something. And I think
absolutely,
the main point there was just the different flavors. Like, it's okay to become close mates with someone. Like, you're more introverted, I'm more extroverted, but I also like recharging by myself, but I also feel recharged with the right people. I feel recharged when I talk to you or Nick or Billy or, other people. I won't list a whole bunch of names because it's the first episode ever, so I won't do that. But I think it's very powerful when you can have different flavors in that regard. But going back to the question of, can you be a good friend if you don't really know God or what, maybe you reject him or whatever it is. I totally agree. Like, you can still be a good friend up until a certain point, because what happens as soon as your friend starts to struggle with something spiritually?
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be in a negative context, like witchcraft or all these other like satanic practices or whatever it is. What happens when your friend starts to deal with those things, but you're not willing to engage in like the spiritual aspect of friendship and relationship? I've definitely had those moments where I feel down and out, and then you or Nick say something, and all of a sudden something starts to rise in my spirit and my soul, and I'm like, I feel so encouraged. I feel like fresh air in my lungs. I can breathe again. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And it also reminds me, like, hey, my friends are here for me. They're not just checking how I'm doing. They actually want to be a part of the process. And because the enemy will come with his lies. He'll just
absolutely always.
He'll always try and do that. And I think it's really cool when you meet regularly, because then those lies can just be put to rest. I feel like it's a little harder when you don't meet regularly. All of a sudden, things can be entertained that aren't meant to be entertained.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. And God showed me something this year. He said to me that you've got to schedule your healing. I was like, oh, what do you mean by this? Like, I mean, you can heal me anytime, any moment. It's like, no, you got to schedule your healing.
Wow.
You've got to schedule it. And that's why he gave us the gift of the Sabbath.
Yes.
That's why he gave us like the gift of resting in him.
Yeah.
Because we actually have to schedule in, like, that's what quiet times are for. When you become disciplined in something, the more you can reap the benefits of it, rather than it being sporadic. So if you wanting to develop a good friendship, set regular times where you can meet.
Come on.
Because that's one way of scheduling your healing, scheduling times to connect in community in whatever way possible.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
And it takes effort. Like,
it does.
We can share that many times. You get exhausted after work and you've had a full day. Maybe you've had the roughest day, or maybe you've had the best day, and but just remain consistent.
Absolutely.
I think I remember God giving me something a while ago, like, impact can never be felt without consistency.
Shush.
So if I can never, I think the best analogy that I can think of is a gun. Maybe not the best one, but anyway, like, I don't condone any usage of guns. But
a week in Texas, and now he's talking about guns.
Listen, I love guns for the right reasons.
Call of Duty.
But when you shoot that bullet, right, the only way it can hit its target is by having a consistent velocity.
Yeah.
Imagine you shot the gun and the bullet didn't even make it out the barrel.
Sheesh. I
think that is quite an accurate representation of maybe why we don't have close friends. So we have this encounter, but we don't intentionally pursue friendship beyond the moment of what it is for what it could be.
Yeah. Sheesh.
And I've just seen the fruit of, like, one of my favorite quotes. I mean, you've heard me say it a gazillion times, which from Rich Wilkerson, which is like, if you're not fighting for unity, you accept division.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because our human nature is to think the worst of things. It's not actually to give someone the benefit of the doubt, because before pre-Jesus, it's a sinful nature.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been spending time in the Word or renewing your mind, or have friends that bring out and reveal the importance of a walk with God, it's very easy to just assume the worst and start going into the spiral of negative thinking.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important to meet consistently, because it's actually synchronizing, resynchronizing.
Yeah.
That's very funny. That was the start of the podcast, and that's kind of where we're heading towards the end. And now it's like, it's a synchronizing with each other. It's being willing to, and just because you've synchronized doesn't mean you won't go out of sync.
Yeah.
But it's, what are the points where you do come back together and go, you know what, actually, dude, I'm still struggling with this. Or, hey, bro, that was out of line. Like, why were you acting like that?
Yeah.
And then also being okay with not being offended when your friend calls you out about it.
Yeah.
But this all links back to the good, being a good friend. I think the one thing I learned no hard feelings to anyone that I know and love with friendships over the past. But one thing I realized is I got to a point where I said, God, I've got good friends, fun friends. I really have a good time. But why do I still feel empty inside?
Sheesh.
And it's because there wasn't a common pursuit of God where when I'm weak, they could share life.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is you can have good friends, but you can also have godly friends. And godly friends are the purest form of good friends.
Yeah.
Not by their actions alone, but by the blood of Jesus Christ that enables them, even in their weakness, to share healing with you.
Absolutely, yeah. I think like friendships, even relationships become draining when your only source of healing comes from those. That's why it's God and community.
Yes.
It's not just community alone, and it's not just God alone.
Come on.
Because, our friendships and relationships become super draining because now I'm drawing what I'm only can draw from God, from you,
Yeah.
And so it becomes a draining thing. Like, God, why don't you just spend time with God, man? You just keep on coming to me for
That's
advice.
what I think all the time. No,
I'm not God.
Jokes.
There's a lot of people who use other people as crutches. It's like they're going through a hard time and they'll come back with the same problem over and over and over again because they actually want attention. They don't actually want to be healed. So they'll come to you with the same problems over and over again. And that, when they would actually make one decision that would change that forever, would change that completely. And sometimes those people also just need to be directed in the way of God, directed to spend time with Him, directed to pray about the actual situation,
So good.
And I think that's also very, very, very important.
So maybe to wrap it up,
because
we do need to come in for a landing now. We are, I think, almost hitting the 1 hour mark. But we spoke about the importance of boundaries 1.5 years ago. And there was, in our conversation, we spoke about boundaries, but you shared it at the relationship panel this past weekend. Do you want to share part of that conversation and the power of having healthy boundaries, even in friendship?
Yeah. So I think the beauty of accountability, which is a major aspect of friendships, good friendships, is boundaries. I've certainly seen fruit of that in my own relationship, my dating relationship, and basically what tends to happen is if I've got a boundary in my hand, even if I'm trying to overcome an addiction, that's the beauty of friendship.
Yeah.
I've got a boundary in my hand and I'm trying to get past this, I'm trying, as much as I want to, I can push past because it's in my hand. I can control the boundary line. But the moment I put that in the hands of a friend, the moment I try and go past that boundary, there's a friend there that's like, oh, hell no.
Where you going, buddy?
You can't go there. Remember, we spoke about that. You ain't supposed to be going online at 10 p.m.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
What are you doing online?
Yeah. You said you wouldn't talk to that girl again. What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Now there's a wall, and I can't actually go beyond that, and it brings safety. That's why Psalm 16 says the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Boundaries there for protection, and boundaries become fortified, proper boundaries when you put them in the hands of trusted people. Because as long as it's in my hand, it's not actually a boundary. It's just like a little fence on wheels that I can move around whenever I like, and it's like an illusion of a boundary.
Yeah.
The moment you tell somebody to keep you accountable, then it's like, as much as you want to even go past there, you can't.
You just don't want to.
And it's like it's strengthening each other in our weak areas.
That's
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a very beautiful thing. I think also you can tell. I think fruit is quite dependent on the boundaries you've set.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know if I want to open up that other can of worms. But
part 2.
Yeah, part 2. Yeah, part 2. But yeah, man, I think that's all we have time for. But bro, thank you so much for coming on, and
thanks for having me.
I say thank you for coming. You helped me set up everything.
and the awesome guys that are somewhere.
That are somewhere.
Yeah.
I think they've gone to the toilet anyway. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining this podcast, the In Sync Frequencies podcast, and it's our first episode ever. Looking forward to the future and what God's going to do, and I can't believe it's been like going on to 5 years in the making.
Crazy.
Like officially 3 years of practical in the making, 2 years of just thinking about it. But yeah, it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
I mean, we were feeling pretty tired. I'm feeling a little better now.
Yeah. Much better after all that pizza that Steve got. You know, if you ever want to be part of the In Sync Frequencies podcast,
you get pizza beforehand.
Just know you're gonna get so full you're gonna want to sleep during the podcast.
Dude, I thought you were just like feeling the Holy Spirit. You It's like my bed's calling. But yeah, bro, like again, I just want to thank you because you have been such a rock pillar in my life. I mean, obviously you're not God, but pretty close.
No way.
I'm teasing. But you've just been such an incredible friend, and I can't think of, maybe one other person, Nick himself, if we could have him here too, amongst other really good friends that we have too. But I knew from the beginning I wanted to do episode 1 with you, and just thank you for your time, your openness, your ability to like share powerful things in such grace with such ease, even though it hasn't been an easy journey for your own life.
Sheesh.
And you're still growing, and you're an inspiration, bro. You really are. And I'm not trying to just float your boat or blow wind into your sails, but it's awesome to have you on the podcast. And I'm really trusting that this will reach the ears it needs to, touch the hearts it needs to, and it'll go further. And hopefully we can do another one in the future. We will be doing another one in the future. Awesome. I don't know how or when, but thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, bro.
Thank you.
Cool, guys. Thank you so much. If you want to find out more, check that description, and we should have all the links on the socials that we are going to make, because I just realized we haven't done all of that, but we will do it. And stick around. We're going to be posting once a month for now. That's all we can do. That's all the team can do right now, but hopefully in the future we can have like a proper setup in studio and invite more people on, have more microphones, and just enjoy the beauty of growing in relationship and conversation, not just with people who agree, but also people who challenge our beliefs, people who disagree. But yeah, it's going to be good. So peace out from Kyle and Steve, and from Akshay and Matt, who are behind the cams. Absolute legends. Thanks, guys. And In Sync Frequencies out. See ya. Peace.